Hello, my name is Sophia O'Brien, and I'm a recent graduate from Anderson University with a license in elementary education and a minor in peace and conflict transformation studies. Throughout this video, I am hoping to share with you what I know, believe, and do when it comes to my teaching philosophy and why I think I would be a great addition to your school. The first thing that I know is that learning and developmental patterns vary among individuals. I believe that this is shown through the Universal Design for Learning framework, and personally, I have seen this at A Heart for Kids in Anderson, Indiana. It's an after-school program for students who are struggling, and especially in reading. In this program, there are first through fourth graders, and they are all developmentally at completely different stages, and because of this, they all learn in completely different ways. Continuing on, I also know that all learners bring unique individual differences to the learning process. Because of this, I believe that it's very important to implement culturally relevant pedagogy in the classroom and really get to know who your students are. While at Heart for Kids, I worked with students and was able to build amazing relationships with all of them and really get to know how their home and their background and their life experiences affect them in the classroom, which is why it's so important to know these things about students so you can create a better learning experience for them. Another thing I know is that learners need supportive and safe learning environments in order to thrive. I believe in order to do this, I have to collaborate with my learners and allow them to collaborate with each other. I also believe that through this collaboration, mutual respect and trust must be created in order for students to feel supported and safe. My minor in peace and conflict transformation has really prepared me to understand how to create safe environments for students. One of my courses, I was able to learn about the different restorative justice practices, including talking circles, and how these help to build trust and communication between teachers, students, and families. I know that to be an effective teacher, I have to know the concepts I'm teaching, obviously. I believe it is very important for teachers to know the content and continue to review and learn more in order to create meaningful lessons for students. There were many times in my educational practicums where I would have to go back and review and understand the information before I taught my lessons. This way I could go into the classroom fully understanding the content knowledge I had to teach, which allowed for a better lesson that fostered students' inquiry and understanding of concepts. I also know that to be an effective teacher, I have to connect to the content I am teaching and use differing perspectives to engage learners in critical thinking, creativity, and collaborative problem solving. I believe that differentiation, Bloom's taxonomy, and depths of knowledge are all ways to engage students in cross-disciplinary skills and differing perspectives. Going back to my practicums at AU, once I knew the content for myself, I then had to connect it in ways that my students could understand. And that does not mean teaching it all one way. I had to create a lesson that encompassed many different ways of learning in order for all my students to grasp the knowledge. I know to be an effective teacher, there has to be assessments and multiple forms. I believe that assessments are a good way to gather data for progress monitoring. They're also a good way to know how well your students are understanding a concept, and also a good way just as a teacher to reflect on how well you taught your lessons and guide decision making from there. Another practicum I had while I was at AU, I was able to do a one-on-one reading intervention with a student for 5 weeks. At the beginning of our time together, we did an initial assessment, and then throughout our time, we were able to do formative assessments that kind of guided what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go with the lesson. And then at the end, we were able to do a post-assessment that looked a lot like the initial assessment. This allowed me to see the students' growth throughout the 5 weeks. I also know that data gathered from these assessments can be used to plan instruction that supports every student in meeting their learning goals. I believe that scaffolding the material is an important part of supporting students through the instruction, along with collaborating with parents, family, and colleagues to understand and meet the individual's needs of every learner. Going back to my one-on-one intervention, my data and information that I gathered every day from the student allowed me to plan instruction for the next day, whether it was reviewing or moving on to a new concept. I know that another part of being an effective teacher is to use a variety of instructional strategies that encourage learners to develop a deep understanding of the content. I believe that differentiation, inquiry-based instruction, visualizations and graphics, technology in the classroom, and many more are all instructional strategies that will help and engage all learners. In all my practicums at AU and with all my students, I knew that I had to be creative and make learning fun. I was able to create games for my students, foster hands-on learning, and even use technology to make the learning accessible for every student. I know that to be an effective teacher, I also have to continually engage in professional learning. I believe that this can be accomplished through basic reflection at the end of every teaching day, or collaborating with colleagues and attending meetings, or even just through professional growth opportunities. I actually had the opportunity to attend a symposium in Chicago on education equity, and I got to hear from the former Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. This symposium honestly allowed me to learn more about my classroom, how I can make it better, and what I can do about all the issues facing the education system. Lastly, I know that as a teacher, I have to seek appropriate leadership roles and opportunities to take responsibility for student learning. I believe that students do not leave everything outside the classroom door. Every part of their life and every experience and challenge they're going through comes into the classroom with them, which is why I have to be not only a teacher but an advocate for my students in order to ensure that all they have to focus on is their growth and their learning. While I was at Heart for Kids, we worked hand in hand with social workers and with the students' families, and if we noticed a reason outside the classroom that was causing the student to fall behind, we would advocate for that student and do what was necessary to ensure their safety and growth. I'm excited and passionate to work with every individual learner from varying backgrounds and to create an engaged classroom community full of trust, respect, and growth. I hope you will consider me for this position.